Hey guys, this is Bradley Benner with Semantic Mastery, and this is the State of Local SEO Insights with Bradley Benner of Semantic Mastery. And this is for the week of 5/19/2025, so May 19th, 2025. And this is one of the mastermind webinars that I did about almost a month ago now, but it was a really interesting kind of case study or site that I audited that was performing very well in local search. And so we're going to talk about that, about some of the elements that I suspect are causing that particular campaign to perform so well in search, even though a lot of the other SEO metrics, traditional SEO metrics like backlinks, and we think of often as SEOs that, you have to have pages with a ton of content and all of that stuff. There's this campaign that I was auditing that was performing really, really well in local search for real estate related search queries like we buy houses, sell house fast, cash for house, cash offer for house, those types of things. It is in the California market, California area, like on the coast. So it was a fairly competitive area, and yet it was ranking really, really well. And so I broke it down I analyzed it, basically did a full SEO audit. I looked at the four main components that I always look at, which is entity analysis, on-page analysis for the self-hosted site, on-page analysis for the GBP, and then the backlink profile. And out of all four of those things, like a lot of those components or areas had deficiencies that typically would have prevented that campaign from performing very well in search. But I broke everything down, and I identified some unique things that were being done with that I suspect are having an influence on the performance of that campaign in a positive way. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today in the State of Local SEO Insights address that I'm recording right now. But I'm just going to go through and basically review this Local Mastery newsletter edition that's going to be published and released on May 22nd, which is in 3 days from now. And that's pretty much the point of these Local SEO Insights video series, is where I'm just going to basically talk about what the hot topics are that were discussed or covered within the mastermind community in the previous week or so. And then the newsletter, which is basically a recap and summary of one of my webinars that I host every Thursday. I'm just going to review that. So it's kind of like just a different format for presenting the newsletter content and talking about what has been the hottest topics or most discussed topics, etc., that are inside of our Semantic Mastery Mastermind community. All right. So a couple things that we're going to talk about in today's edition, and that is, the content. Content is something that I still see a lot of SEOs. I do a lot of audits and a lot of competitive link analysis reports for link building clients and white label clients and things like that. And so I see a lot of other SEOs work all the time because they ask me to review it. And I'm still seeing a whole lot of content heavy sites, even for local business, local SEO campaigns. And it's not really necessary to do that, guys. What I've found through a lot of testing over the last 2 or 3 years now, really, is that what's most important is for the product or service pages to be thoroughly optimized and thoroughly describe what the product or service is, how it's delivered, the costs associated with it, the timeline for receiving delivery, frequently asked questions about the product or service, all of that. Like, the product or service pages should be thoroughly optimized to describe the product or service and how it's delivered, what the client or customer can expect, all of that kind of stuff. But the location pages, which are the pages that should be ranking for local search queries, don't need to have a ton of content. So, this is talking about, we still see all the time pages with on local SEO type of sites or projects that are keyword times city for each of the cities that the company wants to target within their desired area. Even if it's a storefront businesses typically want to rank across a fairly broad local search area, right? Service area businesses typically want to rank across a local, a fairly large local search area. But storefront businesses are also doing that now too, right? And what I'm saying is, usually, like, for every city or town or census designated place, incorporated community, unincorporated community, etc., that fall within the area that the local business wants to receive local search exposure for or coverage for, then you will see a product or service keyword times every single city or town within their desired local search service area, right? And not only so we have a high number of competing or redundant pages because it's saying the same thing about a particular product or service over and over and over again, where the only thing that changes is the geography, right? So let's just say it's tree removal, city 1, and then tree removal, city 2, tree removal, city 3. It's the same thing over and over and over again, and it's completely unnecessary in local search because a page about tree removal, which is a service page, should be thoroughly optimized about tree removal, how it's delivered, What are the the timeline? What can the customer or can expect on the process? Average cost for removing trees. Maybe like we'll talk about this a little bit later, but maybe a cost calculator. So can give you a fair rough estimate. Like all these things, frequently asked questions about tree removal. Like are permits needed? Is stump grinding included? Like all that kind of stuff. That is where all of the information about tree removal should be placed, is on that page. And then each location page, City 1, City 2, City 3, doesn't need to then regurgitate that information over and over and over again. And then you have another page for tree trimming, same thing. Then it would be another page for tree trimming City 1, tree trimming City 2, tree trimming, completely unnecessary. What I'm saying is focus on the content and the structure of the content with the service or product pages. Product or service pages is where all of the information should be given about that product or service. The location pages should be structured such that Google understands that the page is to satisfy a local search, but then is a navigation point for the human visitor to quickly identify which of the services that the company provides are relevant to their specific needs. So only one location page needs to rank, for as long as there is a navigation element within the content body of the page that is clearly easy and visible for the client or the visitor to see and to be able to click to navigate to the specific product or service page that satisfies their search query. In other words, the location page should be optimized to convey to Google, this is this business, this is what they do, and this is where they do it in this particular city. And when a visitor lands on that location page, which is what should rank for a local search query, they can clearly identify from that same format, who is this company? So that should be clearly visible above the fold. How do I contact them or request contact from them, right? And then what services are available at this location or in this area? And that's all that is really needed on the location pages for them to rank well and to not then compete with the service pages. And now you only need one location page for each location targeted within their desired service area, right? And then you have one service page for every product or service. And then it's through internal linking that it creates an association between the products or services and the locations in which they're available. And on the other side of that coin is the location page that then internally links to all the products or services that are available at that location or in that area. So it's basically reciprocal links from the service page to the location page, to the location pages that are relevant to that service, right? And then each location page is going to have an internal link block that's going to reference and link to each of the services that are available in that area or at that location. Do you understand? And so why I bring that up is because it's not necessary to have these pages with 1,500 words of content anymore, or 3,000 words, or whatever it is. It's not word count that matters for local SEO. It's the structure of the page. Can Google understand through the main optimization elements of the page, which is the URL to start with, titles, which are SEO titles and H1s, headings, which are H2s, subheadings, which are H3s, 4s, 5s, etc., internal links and media, or media and internal links, whatever. Those are the main optimization elements of the page. That is all we need to optimize to be able to convey to Google what the page, and large language models now, what the page is about, through the main optimization elements because of proper structure and heading and subheading hierarchy, right? And that makes it easier for the human visitor, too, to be able to, when they land on the page, they can quickly see from the headings and subheadings the main points of the page so that they don't have to scroll through walls of text like we've seen for years in the SEO industry to get to the relevant section of the page or the relevant area of the site, because not everything has to be put into one page, right? If you have clear headings and subheadings with internal link elements that direct the visitor to the appropriate section or page of the site based upon what their needs are, and that you make it easy for them to identify where how to navigate the site because of headings and subheadings, then now you're killing two birds with one stone, in that you are optimizing in an efficient way for Google and large language models to understand what the page is about. And number two, you're making it easy for consumers to quickly identify who the business is, how to contact them or request contact back, and which pages, products or services are relevant to their needs. They can then click through it and go get all the information that they need about it. And so it's not so much about the content count as it is about structuring it properly in a way that both the machines understand as well as makes it easier for human visitors to navigate the site. All right. And so there's a number of things that can be done to also improve how the site performs in both search and in large language models now, which is using multimedia and engaging type of content, right? So instead of just publishing text only and images, which is traditionally what we see, right? Think about adding interactive elements to the page. We've seen, when we talked briefly about the case study or the campaign that I reviewed, a few weeks ago about the real estate in, we buy houses type of a real estate business in, California. I was talking about how there was some interactive elements on that page where there were some things that were being done that I suspect were helping the campaign and the website to rank really, really well, even though a lot of the traditional SEO metrics really didn't show how that site should have been ranking. Like, in other words, based upon most traditional SEO metrics, that campaign had no business ranking. So some of the elements that I discovered that they were using on that site were interactive elements, things that force the visitor to then engage with the page. So, for example, having an MP3 audio player embedded into the sites that then summarize each of the sections. So, for example, on product or service pages, for each H2, which would be a heading, there can be an audio block, like an audio player that is basically reading, and it can be AI text, AI voiceover, right? So a text to voiceover, you can use AI to do that. And then you record an audio file that basically is reading a summary or the points or the concepts that are being conveyed in that heading section of the page. And for each H2, you have a separate audio player with just at the real estate site that I was reviewing. It just had a little audio player icon. And when you clicked it, it would automatically play an embedded MP3 player. And it was just a WordPress MP3 player. So it wasn't anything fancy. It was just an MP3 file that was uploaded to WordPress. And then when you clicked on the little audio icon next to each H2 heading, it would just play a text-to-speech AI audio file. But you understand, Google and large language models are ingesting all of that content now, not just text-based content, but image-based content, video content, audio content. All of that is getting ingested now. And so there are ways to add additional engagement elements to a page to get visitors to spend more time on the page, to click on elements of the page, which are activity signals, and then also to, maybe submit. That's one of the things we're going to talk about next, which is convert more. Because what is one of the best ranking signals that you can possibly provide to Google? A conversion, right? When a conversion has been recorded by Google, Google knows that, especially when the page was, the visitor landed onto the page that ultimately ended up in a conversion signal from Google search. In other words, if the entrance page was a page that was served up in the Google search results to a consumer, a visitor, a human that went to Google, searched for a query, then they clicked through the search results to whatever page it was that was served up to them, and then they convert by submitting a contact request form or an opt-in or making a purchase, whatever the conversion goal is of that page. When Google recognizes that a conversion has occurred from a visitor that landed onto a page that was served up from search, that is one of the best ranking signals that you can provide to Google, because it tells Google that the page satisfied the searcher's query and was in so much so that they even took the additional step and converted, again, whatever the conversion goal is, submitting an opt-in form, contact request form, making a phone call, buying a product, whatever it may be, okay? And so going back to what I was saying about making engaging elements, there's things that you can do to also kind of force a conversion. So, for example, like let's say on a page, let's say that somebody searches for tree removal, Pikeville, Kentucky, okay, and they land on a Pikeville, Kentucky page that was optimized for a tree service company. And on that page, it talks about all the services, because it's the location page that should rank, not the tree removal page, but the location page that says, these are the services, tree services that we provide in Pikeville, Kentucky. And then there would be a link to tree removal, a link to the tree trimming page, the stump grinding page, the arborist or tree care page, right? So each service would have its own separate page, and there'd be that internal link element. So then they search for tree removal Pikeville, so they see tree removal is one of the services available, so they click the tree removal page, or to the button to go to the tree removal page. And on the tree removal page, it has all those engaging elements that I was just talking about. An audio player next to each H2 that then summarizes that section in a text or audio format. Excuse me. It might have a infographic that shows like the cycles, the best times of year for tree care, right? Where it says, in the spring, it's tree removal is good before the growth occurs, but in the fall, is tree trimming is good because that's as the kind of the foliage is dying off, whatever. All I'm saying is now it's a clickable element that will expand. That has like tree care, when is the best time of year for tree removal, etc. Then a cost calculator, tree removal cost estimator, right? Something like that. And here's an idea. This is what I'm saying. That can then be a conversion goal. Somebody can submit their information, or I got a tree that's roughly 20 feet tall and 12 inches in diameter around the trunk. what would the estimated cost to be, and then that could, a cost calculator, which is an interactive element, could then provide them with a rough estimate, but then ask for them to submit their information to receive an email version of that estimate, that rough estimate, right? And to also request a callback for, to schedule an actual estimate from a tree care professional at that company. Does that make sense? So the point is, you can have interactive elements which increases engagement on the page, and those engagement signals help Google to recognize that the page is satisfying the searcher. And then, especially if you can get the page or internal link clicks from that page to another page on the same site, that then ultimately results in a conversion. Those are the best types of signals that you can provide to Google. And so it's not about content length. It's not about word count. It's about, does the page clearly convey to Google and language models what the page is about, and does it make it easy for visitors to navigate the site to find the relevant and appropriate information that they're looking for and keep them engaged throughout that process. Okay, so that was basically like what I was talking about, and that all kind of leads into what I was looking at with this SEO campaign. Now, this is just an over conceptual, high level conceptual discussion of this. So if you want the full project and the campaign details, the example, like the specific site that we audited and all of that, it's in the mastermind. Okay, but this was a we buy houses type of, quick turn real estate type of business in the West Coast, out on the coastline of California. I think it was in the San Jose area, but whatever it was, maybe it was Santa Monica area, whatever it was. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was performing really well. And like I said, a lot of the traditional SEO metrics like backlinks, the on page, like it didn't have a ton of content. It did have one page for every location that they wanted to target within their service area. And then they had basically, interactive elements on the page, including, I think it was some sort of a, offer estimator for, like, if you enter in your house details, it would give you a rough estimate as to what they could potentially offer for it, and things like that. So a lot of these interactive elements were put onto these pages. And that is my assumption. That is why it was ranking so well, because there was a lot of additional things on, like as far as the backlink profile and everything else, that didn't really support why it was ranking so well. Okay, and so there's that, and then there's also some interesting things about, and I talked about this in the previous week's local SEO, State of Local SEO Insights video series, but I was talking about branded search and click signals, and there's ways that you can manipulate that and kind of socially engineer that. And again, those are signals that help the campaign to perform better in local search, even though they're not traditional SEO, tactics or things that we can produce as SEOs. So, for example, having more branded search signals helps Google to identify or recognize that the business is popular in its local area, which will help Google to promote the site in search results, even if some of the other SEO areas are deficient, right? So backlinks, on page, etc. And so, again, doing some, social engineering to get more branded search and click signals from consumers in the local area of the business, as well as adding interactive engagement elements to the pages, and focusing on structuring the pages to convey very clearly and efficiently to both Google large language models and to the visitors what the page is about, and how to navigate through the site to the appropriate and relevant sections very easily. That all of those combined really help ranking in local search right now, even where a lot of the other areas that we think of as traditional local SEO requirements may be lacking. And I'm seeing that time and again right now in my audits and competitive link analysis reports. There's a lot of things being shaken up in the local SEO space as far as campaigns and companies performing well that, according to traditional SEO metrics, really have no business ranking. And it has to do with Google placing more weight or more value on some of these other signals that are harder to manipulate, like engagement, like conversions. You understand? So just some food for thought for you to think about, and start thinking about ways on how you can add that kind of interactive elements and try to force conversions, or at least encourage conversions on pages, because each conversion acts as another very powerful ranking signal. Okay, so use Wikipedia entities to shape titles, and not just titles, but headings and subheadings within the pages. I've talked a lot about this on Hump Day Hangouts, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this right now, but something that you can do is to identify, this is how you optimize for entities versus keywords. Remember, this is as it relates to local SEO. So the easiest way to do it is just go to Google search and search for whatever industry you're working in, for the top level product or service type of search queries in that business industry, that business vertical. Okay. So for example, HVAC services, you could search for HVAC service, HVAC contractor, air conditioning, central heating or heating, all of those types of keywords. Just go look for those types of search queries plus a city modifier. And just so that you can go to Google Maps and identify Google business categories that are referenced within the Google business profiles that are ranking for those search queries. And then start collecting the Google business categories into a spreadsheet. Let me give you a quick example. All right, so here's what's called, I've showed this before, but this is the topics and entities spreadsheet that I created for tree service stuff, and it's just an example that I show. But tree service is a Google business category, and so is arborist service. These are the two most common Google business categories that we see associated with tree service industry. And so we can identify the top level categories, and then from that we can start to extract the entities, because we can then go identify what are the Wikipedia topics, which are entities that the Google business categories were created from. Okay, so there, and then we can start to extract the top level entities, or the categories, but then also the top level entities that are relevant to that category. And that way, when we optimize for a local SEO type of a campaign, when we are optimizing the web pages on the self-hosted site, we can then optimize each page for both Google business categories and the top level entities. That way, Google, it can rank well in both organic search and map search. In other words, if we optimize for topics and entities, right, we're optimizing for organic search. When we optimize for Google business categories, we're optimizing for map search. So I like to try to optimize for both topics and entities plus Google business categories. That way I'm optimizing for both organic and for maps search on the same page. Okay. And so very quickly, you can identify what the top level categories are, and then you can start to search for what are the top level topics and entities that are associated with those, or that those categories were created from. Okay. And so I talk about that a lot in the mastermind because, people always want to know, how do they apply that to the industries that they work in? And so I've given lots of examples of how I do that. And then there's even some tools that can help to facilitate that now instead of it being done manually. And I just actually demoed one of those tools last week. It's not quite available for people yet, but once it is, we're going to make sure we promote it to our audience, because it's going to help this process. It's a lot more efficient. Okay. So again, very important that you want to kind of optimize for both Google business categories as well as topics and entities, so that you can optimize for both map search and organic search. Okay. So this is what I was talking about earlier about an interactive element. And I was talking about a cost calculator. And so this is something that's really interesting, because I even have a tree service contractor that ended up doing this, where and it wasn't actually an app that I built for them. They got it from somewhere else, but they had a cost calculator application widget essentially that they put into their site. And what was really interesting is that they started receiving a number of submissions from visitors about I don't know if they were just curious or what, but from receiving those types of conversions from an engagement with the cost calculator that gave them a tree removal estimate, they saw a significant jump in ranking performance, and then also a higher conversion rate from the visitors that were landing on the page, the ones that ultimately converted. It wasn't just the visitors, but from the conversions that they would normally get, they saw from the conversions that came through the cost calculator, they saw an 8% increase in conversions and it was only a short period of time. I think it was 3 weeks that we had tracked the data or something like that. It's a very short amount of time, but it was really interesting to see. And that is what kind of led me down this path to start thinking about, not only is the engagement elements, or elements that encourage engagement on the page, not only are they valuable for improving conversions, but also for helping to improve ranking performance or local search performance. Okay, so it's just kind of an interesting, an interesting observation to see how these interactive elements like cost calculators, which can pretty much be developed for almost any sort of home service. By the way, you can go to ChatGPT, or you can go to Sheets and use something like GPT for Sheets or something like that to develop a calculator, and you can just ask, whatever language model you want to use. It doesn't have to be ChatGPT. Whichever one you want to use, you can ask it to develop a cost calculator where you can feed it some data. And by the way, you don't even have to be the source of that data. Like, for example, I can go to Google and search for average cost to remove a tree. And I could do that across a number of locations. And then I can, query and just look for content out there from other tree companies that have published blog posts or whatever about the average cost to remove a tree, right? And I can kind of consolidate the data from the different tree contractors that have published about it. Sometimes like Angie or Home Advisor or Yelp or Lawn Starter, or those big directory sites also have content like that. We can take content like that and feed all of that content into the language model, whichever chat you're using, and say, now, kind of average out all this data and create an tree removal cost calculator based upon the averages of this data or the median of this data. Do you understand? And that would be close enough for it to be. So what I'm saying is you don't even have to have all of that data. You can find it, feed it into the large language model, and have the language model then create a sort of engagement calculator or widget or whatever that can help you to get more engagement from visitors for your clients' websites. Does that make sense? So the point that I'm trying to make is very easy to do this kind of stuff now that we have AI chats that we can just feed the information into and say, do this, create an embeddable cost calculator that will go into this site. You can style it and everything else. Tell it like, hey, go view this page. This is where we're going to embed it. You want to have it match and fit the styling of that page with colors and all that other kind of stuff. And you can get that code very easily now and then just add it into a site. And then you can, map the fields of that over to a form or have it where it redirects once the cost estimate is provided. It then pulls up a form, says, want this emailed to you and would like an actual quote request from one of our qualified, tree professionals or something like that. Put in your phone number and email. And then that then triggers the conversion. Do you understand? So there's a number of things that can be done to help kind of improve the content of a site without it being all word-based. Okay. And the interactive engagement type of elements are having a significant influence on performance right now. And conversions is the ultimate ranking signal. So if you can combine structuring the pages properly for entities, so topics and entities and Google business categories, and then adding interactive elements that encourage the visitor to engage with the page and ultimately hopefully have something on the page or within one of the pages that the visitor is likely going to visit has some sort of a conversion goal on it, even if they're not ready for requesting an estimate right out of the gate. Maybe if they saw a cost estimate from a calculator, that might be just enough to push them over the edge to say, okay, yeah, now I'm ready to hear what these guys have, or what this company has to say, right? So adding all of those elements to a page into the site can really help it to perform better without need for additional backlinks, without the need for 1,500 to 3,000 words of content. So that's it for the State of Local SEO Insights video series for the week of 5/19/2025. This is Bradley Benner with Semantic Mastery, and if you like what you saw today and you would like to get this newsletter, just go to localmastery.semanticmastery.com. Again, localmastery.semanticmastery.com, and you can sign up for our newsletter. It's very inexpensive. If you want the full training and all of the SOPs and all of the webinars with all the training that I provide, then you're going to want to go to mastermind.semanticmastery.com. Again, that's mastermind.semanticmastery.com. This is Bradley Benner with Semantic Mastery, and I'll see you next week.